It is with a heavy heart that I must conclude the quintessential breakdown of Quintessential Quintuplets. When I first set out on this journey, it was late 2019, the manga still had a few chapters left to go, and the anime had just been announced for a second season. Now, over 3 years later, I finally reached the end. I put off a few of these videos, delaying the inevitable. But all good things must come to an end, and I can only hope that the next chapter of my life is as wonderful as Futaro's life after high school. Ichika tried the hardest not to fall in love. That might not sound right since Nino was the most antagonistic, and one could argue that Itsuki never truly fell in love. But love isn't a decision. Ichika started falling for Futaro early on in the story. By the time of the bonfire arc, she was becoming aware of those feelings. But she fought them for Miku's sake. Her desire to repress her own feelings and put Miku on a pedestal is one of the reasons why things got so drastic and so nasty when she did decide to be honest with herself. She was trying to play catch up and tear her sisters down. That's why by chapter 115, she's already come to terms with her own failures. She saw who he was going to pick on the second night of the festival, and she braced for impact. A small part of her clung to hope, but she was too perceptive and too mature to take rejection as poorly as Nino. She's been handling the situation better than even Futaro. The chapter starts with Futaro overhearing some fellow students about how dumb it is to start up a relationship so close to graduation. This is a fear Futaro himself was well aware of and had to overcome. He's not so worried about himself though. He already proved he can study and deal with quintuplet shenanigans and still get some of the highest test scores in the country. He is probably worried about how this drama might affect the quints and their grades. They're all heading into uncharted territory. And to make matters worse, Yotsuba left him hanging. She told him she loved him and then left before he could say the same to her. The quints then had dinner with their dad and nobody addressed the elephant in the room. I don't even think Yotsuba told any of them by that point. Miku and Nino would have had to figure it out through process of elimination. Just one day after the festival's conclusion, Ichika invites Futaro to hang out. He does protest while going along with it anyway because he wants to know what's going on with Yotsuba. Ichika starts off the scene unaware of what all went down and is also liberated from that burden. When she shows up, she starts to say she overslept, but quickly changes her story to make it sound like she spent more time to get ready. She wants him to think that she's still putting in the effort to impress when this is the most casual and comfortable she's been since the earliest arcs. She even made sure to get Yotsuba's approval first, which puts Futaro firmly on the back foot for the remainder of this chapter. There's been a couple teases of how uncool Futaro actually is and how self-conscious he can be, but this is the most anxious he's probably been all series. He does manage to open up to Ichika about what all happened, and this catalyzes her final temptation. She thinks about reaching for him, taking advantage of Yotsuba's hesitance to steal him away, but she doesn't. She's happy for Futaro and for Yotsuba, and decides she's going to support them, just as Nino said she should during the Sisters' War. The great irony is that Nino isn't putting her money where her mouth is, and has become another obstacle in Yotsuba's way. Overall, this is my favorite moment from Ichika because it's the moment where her head and her heart are finally on the same page. She still loves him. Those feelings won't go away. But there's things more important than her chasing some boy. Love isn't one-sided. Everyone else is just going to have to come around to acknowledging the feelings they all have for each other. In this way, Ichika gets the ball rolling on this final arc. She even offers to let him practice his real confession, which he passes on, only to practice on a statue later in that same chapter. Miku is the best at disguises, but all she can do is imitate. Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery, but imitation is not the same as replication. This is another reason her chemistry with Nino is so fun. Nino's love for her sisters is an extension of her ego. If she's cute and they're identical, they must be cute as well. Miku always dug a little deeper. She gets all their mannerisms and inflections and interests right, but she can't become them. Nino's tea and Yotsuba's orange juice are just too sweet for her. That sweetness that she can't stand is something that makes them different from her, and it's those differences that Futaro fell in love with. And it's those small subconscious mannerisms she does in response to doing stuff she doesn't like that gave her away back in Scrambled Eggs. A lot of Miku's development has centered around the things she likes and the various coping mechanisms that developed those likes. Here at the end, she confronts one of Yotsuba's deepest seated fears, and in doing so, showcases how their differences in tastes is something that can't be replicated. If they differ in what they like, it stands to reason that they differ in what they don't like. Therefore, Yotsuba's fear of being replaced by a doppelganger is unfounded. Yotsuba and Miku end up getting stuck in a karaoke bar because of a storm. Because of this, Yotsuba isn't able to cower away before Miku makes her point. She orders the same exact thing that Yotsuba orders and then complains about how the juice is too sweet for her. Then they cue up a song for karaoke and end up picking the same song. Love Vacation is a made-up, in-universe song that Nino likes to sing and did sing at the start of the last festival. As such, the song became a reality when the movie came out. They pick it for similar reasons. They both care about Nino. Miku picked it because Nino had annoyed her enough with it to where she's already memorized it, and it happens to be the only available upbeat song she knows. Yotsuba picked it because Nino is on her mind. This does make Miku self-conscious because she has more important things to talk about than whatever Yotsuba and Nino have going on. Miku gets a mediocre score and then accidentally turns off the machine, which triggers the more important topic. She's mad at Yotsuba for making Futaro worry. Because Miku has been so careful in her observations and so meticulous in her disguises, she was able to figure out how Yotsuba feels way before anyone else. She's even figured out that Yotsuba's hesitance is because of what happened at their prior school, but that's not an excuse to hide from her feelings. She wants Yotsuba to start dating Futaro. She wants Yotsuba to accept his feelings and any of the sisters' negative feelings that come with it. If she wants Futaro to be happy, she's going to have to take on Nino and Miku's anger. And if she can't accept that, she'll live the rest of her life contemplating what could have been. Yotsuba accepts her rivalry, and the two spend several hours singing until their voices give out. And on their way home, Miku gives an internal monologue of something she doesn't want to tell Yotsuba. It was only thanks to Yotsuba's academic mistakes that they were able to meet Futaro in the first place. That would be good enough to make up for the otherwise unfortunate event. But for Miku, there's something deeper there. It was thanks to Futaro that Miku was able to open up and confront her sisters. And it was thanks to that, and thanks to all the laughter and tears they were able to share, that Miku was able to finally learn to love herself.
5人の中で私が一番落ちこぼれだから私は風太郎が好きもともと好きだから戦国武将好きそう思えるほどに私は私を好きになれたんだ
Miku has always been a fan favorite character. She was the first to start on her arc. Her nerdy interests in games and history make her relatable to the series' target demographic, and her arc is by far the most fulfilling and complete. With a series like this, you can't help but wonder what the various characters do after they strike out. But with Miku, we know she's going to be fine, because her happiness is no longer dependent on others. She can go out into the world as an adult and live her own life to the fullest. Itsuki serves as this final arc's barometer. Everyone else is in touch with their own feelings, maybe even a little too in touch in Yotsuba's case. Itsuki is the only one that never confessed and never kissed Futaro, which means she's the only one who never put her feelings to the test. Even though she's out of touch with herself, she is still very in touch with Futaro's feelings as well as Yotsuba's. When Ichika tells her that they're not going out, she's a bit perplexed. She knows she should be happy for them, but congratulating them still doesn't feel right. And it doesn't feel right to her for the same reason Futaro didn't do a proper confession, which is the same reason Yotsuba wasn't able to accept his feelings. He got so swept up in the emotions of confessing at the end of the festival that he ended up being too impulsive. This is something he was growing weary of by the time he got to the end of his self-imposed time limit. 3 days wasn't enough to resolve the tension between all the girls, confirm Yotsuba's feelings, and start a relationship with her. Itsuki is intuitively aware of this, even if she doesn't consciously recognize it. Itsuki once again asks Shimoda for advice and does a twist on the old asking for a friend cliche which Futaro employed against Miku back in Scrambled Eggs. At least Itsuki is aware enough to know Shimoda knows she has no friends, and so she makes up a network drama as her excuse. Shimoda still sees right through it and asks her if she's jealous. It's a lot more complicated than that because Itsuki is a much more complex character than your typical rom-com fodder. Shimoda gets way too into it and even starts getting a little closer to the core of the issue. There is a tug of war between Itsuki's love and her fears. Futaro's confession and Yotsuba's response changed the status of the entire family dynamic, and now Itsuki is seeing an open opportunity she had been ignoring before. She can easily be the one to sweep Futaro away, but in doing so she would betray Yotsuba, who she's been rooting for this entire time. Not only that, but no matter how things play out, there's still going to be tension between the sisters because such strong feelings won't just go away overnight. And that can cause all the same types of conflict Itsuki spent the entire Ordinary Days arc trying to prevent. Shimoda asks her to talk with one of her other students about various relationship problems, and we see the swirling uncertainty of Itsuki's emotions play out over a montage. She gets so caught up in her soul-searching that she's thrown off guard when Futaro tries talking to her. She was so fixated on herself that she nearly forgot what kind of relationship she already has with Futaro, which is totally fine and healthy. Girl's gotta take care of herself. But it complicates things when Futaro wants to ask about the same subject that's been troubling her. They get lunch together, she gives him dessert to congratulate recent developments and feels fine doing it. Just when she thinks Shimoda was wrong after all, Yotsuba shows up. Things get awkward and Yotsuba does the same exact pathetic excuse for an icebreaker that Itsuki did earlier in the chapter, which just further highlights that they're on the same wavelength, worried about the same problems, but does so in a way that might also indicate that they feel the same way about the same boy after all. To make matters worse, Nino is here too! Yotsuba wanted to speak with Nino, and Futaro wanted to speak to Itsuki, and the two pairings end up sitting at tables adjacent to each other. Futaro hears Nino make the same silly bit of small talk as the others, and teases her about it, which causes more tension to boil. Neither party can talk about what they wanted to talk about while the other party is present. Itsuki changes the subject to better include Nino and Yotsuba into the conversation, which just causes more problems between the two. It also causes tension between Itsuki and Nino. Nino is confident in her own feelings but doesn't know where Itsuki stands. And her desire for people to be honest with themselves doesn't work on Itsuki because, like I said, Itsuki doesn't even know how she herself feels. Nino storms off and Futaro gets separated from Yotsuba, which leads Itsuki and Futaro to finally discuss what they wanted to discuss in the first place. But first, gotta remind the audience that Itsuki is a wimpy little scaredy cat. The two tumble down, and before they can regain their composure, Nino and Yotsuba storm back in. Futaro pretends to remain calm at first, but exposes himself by mentioning the same bit of small talk for the 4th time in the chapter. They do give themselves away, but try passing it off as mice, which doesn't work. Itsuki is more concerned about being seen with Futaro and adding to all the drama happening. However, they are pretty freaking chatty for a couple trying to not get caught. Like, Itsuki, sweetie, who cares if they see the light? They definitely hear you talking about your phone. But it does have some pretty satisfying payoff when we see the real reason she doesn't want Futaro to have her phone. After getting called out, she freaks out, thinking they'll get the wrong idea when that's not at all what happens. She was fretting over nothing again. It all finally clicks for Itsuki and she's able to move past her uneasy feelings and give more advice to the middle schooler whose crush already has a girlfriend. Love is important, but it's not the only important thing. Not every romantic venture is going to have a happy ending. but that doesn't keep us from pursuing love. Itsuki, Nino, Miku, Ichika, they have lost out on a relationship with Futaro, but that doesn't mean it has to taint all the happy memories they have together. Futaro values all those memories, and the sisters should too. None of them have to be alone. They can take these memories with them and remain radiant as they continue pursuing romance within their individual lives. They don't have to be alone. That's what Itsuki was trying to teach Futaro when she created the Rena persona. And that's why, despite not having any real romantic or jealous feelings towards him, she still has a picture of the two of them with Raiha taped to the back of her phone with the caption, "Friends Forever." Nino has had one of the more drastic arcs leading up to this point. She started off by hating Futaro because he threatened her precious status quo. Then she respected him because of how helpful he was. Then she loved him for the way he affected her family and strengthened the bonds between them. And she's always valued her sisters above all else, and during the Sisters' War, she cut right into Ichika's soul with the oft-repeated line. But talk is cheap. You can say wise words all you want. You can give yourself the best advice imaginable. It is not going to dictate how you act when the chips are down, especially when the one who ends up beating you is the one you understand the least. Yotsuba was the first to break the status quo, and Nino has resented her for that ever since. Yotsuba is the most prone to getting hurt, which gives Nino anxiety. Yotsuba never told her that it was Futaro who inspired her initial change in the first place. Nino only has vague memories of seeing him in Kyoto. Nino knows how much work Ichika, Miku, especially Miku, and even Itsuki have put into this romance. Nino is the only one to acknowledge Itsuki as a potential winner, and did so for reasons I mentioned in prior videos. She doesn't know how much effort Yotsuba has put in because she doesn't understand Yotsuba. She's under the impression that Yotsuba is just the kind of person to overextend herself for others just because. Nino doesn't understand that she's this way because of Futaro and kicked it up a notch for his benefit. In short, she doesn't think Yotsuba earned it. She doesn't see how much Yotsuba truly loves him, and so she finds her response insulting. She's denying Futaro's feelings, running around like a coward, and for what? Because she doesn't want to hurt Nino's feelings? If she really wanted to spare her sisters from heartbreak, she would have denied Futaro outright. Running the way she did only added insult to injury against Nino, which Itsuki actually predicted. It was an inadvertent condemnation of Futaro's feelings and the choice he made, but Nino's not as concerned about that. That's why Nino threatens to sever their bond. If Yotsuba's familial relationships are acting as yet another one of her chains, then Nino will sever that bond because she's willing to go that far to make Futaro happy and would expect Yotsuba, or any of her sisters, to do the same. But just as Futaro realized in the prior arc, you don't have to throw everything else away. Yotsuba tries again only to have Futaro and Itsuki make things awkward. It comes to a boil when they talk about their post-graduation plans, and Yotsuba informs them that she's been approached for an athletic scholarship. This pisses Nino off because it reaffirms her frustration that Yotsuba is getting everything she wants gifted to her without putting in any of the effort or honesty that her siblings have. Again, we'll never know for sure, but I don't think Nino would be acting this way if Futaro chose Miku or even Itsuki. Having grown a spine thanks to Miku, Yotsuba tries for a third time, but this time she manages to convey her true feelings. She wants Nino to admit defeat. She doesn't want to sacrifice those familial bonds because they matter to Futaro too. Yotsuba understands what Futaro meant when he said he loved all of them. She knows why Futaro worked so hard to keep them all together at their lowest points. And as she says this, Itsuki, still eavesdropping, realizes that she feels the same way. Yotsuba doesn't care how long it takes, and one day she will get Nino to give up and acknowledge their relationship. She is willing to take on all of Nino's anger and keep the 6 of them together. And Nino takes on that challenge because secretly, she's always been jealous of how Yotsuba was the first to find herself. She doesn't know when to quit, and so she'll keep an eye out for any opportunity to steal Futaro away, something that will only work if Futaro's feelings aren't genuine. Nino calls Futaro out for hiding and restates her intention directly to him. Nino then bullies Yotsuba into being more confident in her own feelings, which is just the most Nino thing in the world. Because sometimes, if pushing doesn't work, you should try pulling. Yotsuba has been bound by chains of her own making. She is Marley's ghost, preparing for the day when she has to confront her own personal Ebenezer Scrooge. The only difference is she's still alive, and it's not too late to free herself from those chains. That's exactly what Futaro has been trying to do ever since 7 Goodbyes. Despite Yotsuba being the most supportive of his efforts from day one, she's always been the biggest problem. She's her own worst enemy, wrapped up in so much regret and self-loathing that she can't even get comfortable with the man she loves. Throughout chapters 115 to 120, she confronts each of her sisters and gets their blessings, only to learn during her clash with Nino that she doesn't actually need their blessing. What she needs is the resolve to accept Futaro's feelings and the guts to deal with any of the fallout it causes. In chapter 115, she tries apologizing to Nino despite having made the conscious decision to head to her assigned room, which she did try leaving but then went back to get her phone, which is when she found Futaro waiting for her. It's a whole deal. But what's important about recapping that scene is that Futaro chose to go to Yotsuba's room and chose to wait for her because he wasn't going to be satisfied until he heard it from her directly. She bargains with Nino, a girl who shouldn't have any say in her relationship. She entertains Miku's morally reprehensible suggestion, which luckily was a joke. Spurred on by Miku's lesson, she finally grows a spine and tells Nino what she should have said from the outset. And after earning Itsuki's congratulations, Yotsuba can finally act like Futaro's girlfriend. The fact this arc exists at all already puts it well above most other rom-coms. Most rom-coms, especially those of the harem variety, are terrified of moving beyond ambiguity. A lesser writer would have been worried that the two biggest factions in the fandom, Miku and Nino, would drop the series once Yotsuba was confirmed to be the bride. While Neji Haruba did receive very unfair and bad faith criticism, he stuck with it and gave us a taste of what this couple's life is going to be like. Futaro is trying to assert himself to make a proper confession, just as Ichika suggested. It's difficult when Yotsuba is full of so much energy and is generally more assertive than he is. There's no need for me to bury the lead. Futaro is trying to recreate his Labor Thanksgiving date from chapters 36 and 37. Back then, he took Yotsuba out as thanks for her helping during the bonfire arc, and she used that chance to give him more insight on her sisters and their interests. At the end of that date, Futaro was unable to figure out what she really wanted, only that she, somewhere along the way, got what she wanted all along. She just wanted him to laugh. But she also expressed how much the thought of families spending time together made her smile, which is a pretty sad dream considering their, home life. So Futaro is recreating that by taking her to places that are special to him and his family. First, he takes her to his family's favorite little restaurant. Then they go to his favorite library. And finally, they go to the park that she took him to. Ever since that day, this park has become special to him as well, which we saw a hint of back in Sisters War. There's no better place for his family to become her family too. Going back to how this date reflects the one from Labor Thanksgiving, Neji Haruba once stated everyone's favorite animal. He said Yotsuba's favorite animal is a camel. He expanded on this during an interview, saying that he once took his wife to the zoo, and she kept laughing at the faces the camel would make. That in turn made him laugh, because that's the true power his wife has over him. That's why he loves her, and that's what he wanted Yotsuba and Futaro to have. For all the love Futaro might have for all the Nakanos, Yotsuba is the only one who has ever made him laugh. So, even though he hadn't realized it at the time, even though he was still hiding from his own feelings, the seeds of this relationship were sown all the way back in chapter 37. Gonna rewind for a bit because the date isn't the only thing happening in chapter 119. The other sisters are spying on the couple and provide color commentary on every move they make. Nino's spoiled ass criticizes Furuo's choice in restaurant. Miku is the polar opposite. Ichika is just happy that this is happening at all, and Itsuki is more interested in her own food than anything else going on. Nino is just full of cognitive dissonance in this chapter and even gets called on it by Ichika. She criticizes every one of Furuo's moves, hoping that Yotsuba will feel the same way and dump him, thus leaving him for her. But she also wants Futaro to stop being so careful and just propose to her already. Itsuki's the only one that knows how awkward it is for everyone involved to take that next step. For both Futaro and Yotsuba, being honest with their feelings would be admitting that they failed to do so in the prior arc. Futaro gets stuck in his thoughts at the library and falls back on a list of questions he compiled in advance because he's a dork. It once again loops back to a major point in the Labor Thanksgiving arc, as well as the last time we saw Futaro at the park. Back in chapter 77, he told Maruo that he planned on helping all the girls achieve their dreams. He's done that with Ichika, Miku, and Itsuki. He also never got an answer from Yotsuba, but unlike Nino, she's never made any indication at what her life goals are. The only answer she gives in this scene is that she wants to support people. Initially, she only did it because of her self-loathing, but thanks to Futaro, she learned to take pride in it. He also never got a real answer from Nino, but her dream has been pretty obvious ever since she was a kid. She only tried denying it in front of Yotsuba back in chapter 52, because she was overcompensating for her lack of maturity. But in the end, she always wanted to own a restaurant, and by the end of the series, she does. Futaro remembers what she said in chapter 52 and makes fun of it, which causes Nino to reveal herself. Itsuki comes out too and shares some of their criticisms with Futaro before pulling Nino away. This just makes him more self-conscious as they go to the park. For multiple arcs, Futaro has been trying to break the self-inflicted chains that have kept Yotsuba from doing what she wants. One of Futaro's biggest goals is to set Yotsuba free so she can pursue her dreams. He pulls a Miku and sets an unreasonable prerequisite for his confession. He challenges Yotsuba to see who can jump the furthest off the swing. Yotsuba goes pretty far, and Futaro pushes himself to go even further, so much so that the literal chain of the swing breaks, sending him flying. He manages to fly further than her, but gets hurt. But that doesn't matter. His reckless prerequisite has been fulfilled, and he has no other choice but to express the full extent of his feelings. Because of that, he actually goes overboard.
好きです。結婚してください。
Yeah, he just proposed to her on the first real date. Yotsuba even makes fun of him, which is how you know you just did something silly. But his feelings reached her, and because he went so overboard with it, she has no more issue confessing her true desire. Her childish dream that she's been too scared to admit is that she always wanted to be a bride. All her life, she's wanted to fall in love with a man who will support her no matter what, and see her for who she really is, and never mistake her for one of her sisters. She always wanted to fall in love, get married, and become just like those little families she would watch from afar while swinging. And someday, Futaro will be able to make that dream a reality. In one throwaway line in chapter 119, Yotsuba says that contrails are a sign of good luck. Chapter 120 is the finale for all the school stuff in the series. Graduation is coming. Futaro and Yotsuba are dating, and everyone is setting sail for their own individual futures. There are a few nuggets of things that still need to be resolved. Futaro sometimes has trouble getting up, and he won't have Raiha to wake him up in college. This is probably a big reason why he and Yotsuba move in together well before their wedding. Speaking of which, Yotsuba still calls him Uesugi-san, which is a habit she's going to have to break before she can become an Uesugi herself. Overall, Futaro hasn't changed all that much. The main thing that has changed is his surroundings and his feelings towards the girls. He's still strict with Yotsuba, still grabs her by the ribbon, and still fixes it after he yells at her. Miku gets self-conscious since she doesn't need his help anymore and isn't planning on taking any college entrance exams. But Futaro is more than their tutor. Sometimes she has to be reminded that they're still friends who would meet up like this anyway. And Futaro isn't alone in this. Miku was the one who gave him hope in the first place, because everyone is a student, but they also have their expertise that they can help out with. Futaro announces that he's moving to Tokyo and going to university there. He was expecting a big reaction, but they already figured he'd do something like that. No matter how far away they are, they'll still be cheering each other on and visit whenever they can. They put up a tough front and are happy to see him so worked up over it, but deep down they're all sad that they won't be able to spend their free time together after graduation. We then get a little montage showing how far things have come. Raiha has become more like her mother, pushing Isanari away so that Futaro can study in peace. Yotsuba and Ichika support Itsuki's study efforts. Sebastian and Emma appear to be a couple, much to Miku and Nino's surprise. Yotsuba gets interviewed by a school. Itsuki takes her entrance exams. Miku and Nino decide to stick together a little longer since they're chasing the same dream. They all attend more festivals together. Ichika gets a big part in a drama. Itsuki makes the cut to attend university. The girls celebrate Itsuki's success. Futaro and Takeda appear to be heading out to Tokyo together, and as our cast begins to drift apart, they make one final declaration that none of them are alone, and they'll continue supporting each other. And they make this promise as the contrails appear above their heads. "5 years after graduation, the wedding that's been teased ever since the title finally arrives. Chapter 121 helps us ease through this time skip whiplash by showing all the girls coming together for the wedding day. Ichika arrives back in Japan after a lengthy stay in America. Itsuki picks her up from the airport, and we see them fretting over how famous Ichika has gotten. On the way to their next stop, they also discuss Ichika's English studies. Staying in America so long helped, but she's still struggling with some stuff because some things never change. We get confirmation that Itsuki has successfully achieved her dream of becoming a teacher. Meanwhile, Miku and Nino have successfully opened up a pastry shop together. We later find out that this shop used to belong to Futaro's mother, but closed down when she died. Making food was her dream, and because of that, Isanari refused to sell the place, which is why the Uesugis were in so much debt at the start of the series. It's really wholesome that Miku and Nino inherited her dream and her shop because Miku's dream was discovered when Futaro compared her bread to his mother's. There's also that weird extra layer that Nino always found Isanari attractive, but best not to dwell on that. Just like how I won't dwell on how many people unironically ship these two. Nino makes some comment about how Ichika must have developed more refined tastes while staying in America, which tells me that Neji has never actually been to America. This does open up a joke about how Nino hasn't changed much and is always looking at Ichika's Instagram to keep tabs on her. Ichika offers to make a post about their shop, but Miku asks her not to. She wants to be able to handle everything with just her and Nino for now, and doesn't want to get too popular too quickly. At least that's what I think Miku's logic is. Whatever is going through her head, Ichika understands. Then Nino makes some crack about letting Ichika work there if her acting career ever craters, which is, not gonna lie, pretty mean-spirited. I'm with Ichika on this one. The star of the day finally arrives, caked in sweat from riding her bike here all the way from Tokyo. She and Futaro moved in together at some point during Ichika's trip stateside. He took the train the prior day to visit his family while Yotsuba rode her bike because she's weird like that. Then we get this panel that, for me, 100% confirms that Futaro and Yotsuba are sleeping together. She denies it here and in the later bonus chapter, but I ain't buying it, and neither are her sisters. You don't get to sound so confident about someone's sleep schedule unless you share a bed, and you don't get to share a bed with your fiance, who you live with, without consummating that relationship at least once. Bedroom humor aside, the Quints put on matching earrings, both in reference to the bride having her ears pierced in chapter 14, when Nino said she'll get her ears pierced before her wedding. Like I said in prior videos, people tried using the pierced ear as evidence that Ichika or Nino were the bride, but here we see all of them getting it done on the same day of the wedding. Nino uses this to be a little vindictive, which, honestly, not a fan. Nino comes off as petty and insecure in this whole final stretch, and while I totally get it in the immediate aftermath of the last festival, it's been years and I was hoping to see more signs that she's gotten over herself. The official wedding ceremony that we saw in prior arcs comes to pass, and the wedding party gets ready for the reception. Futaro asks around for the other girls since he didn't see them in the crowd, and yeah, it turns out they were all backstage the whole time. Again, kinda weird and petty, and if I was dating a twin or something and they pulled this on me, I would not appreciate it. Futaro gets a visit from Maruo, another person who wasn't at the ceremony, but he had his own reasons. Turns out he and Futaro didn't have many opportunities to bury the hatchet up to this point. They squashed the beef here. Futaro drinks some wine with his new father-in-law, which we know Maruo only does on special occasions. Isanari eavesdrops on the conversation just in time to hear his son say what he believes true love is. Futaro aspires to become the sort of man who only loves one woman his entire life. Just like Isanari, who loved his wife so much that he went into debt just to keep her dream alive, and just like Maruo, who still wears his wedding ring long after Rena's death. Futaro gets called into a final quintuplet game while Isanari and Maruo celebrate their children's wedding. By the time Futaro arrives, he seems to have already figured out what they're up to. They're all problem children, and Yotsuba's the biggest problem child of them all, but that's who he fell in love with. Chapter 122 cuts back and forth between the quintuplet game and the speeches Yotsuba and Futaro wrote for the reception. The girls only wanted him to pick out Yotsuba as one final test of his love, which he actually managed to pass just by picking out her voice before they were even ready. It is a testament to Neji's artistic abilities and how much I love these characters that I was able to figure out who is who before this final chapter was released. Yotsuba is in the middle and the only one staring right at him. Ichika is the easiest to pick out because her hair is so much shorter than the others. Itsuki is the most relaxed, and that just leaves Nino and Miku, which the only difference I could see is that Nino's smile is a little sharper than Miku's. But yeah, other than Yotsuba in the middle, they're actually lined up numerically, so I got to use some inductive reasoning. As shitty as this would be in a normal setting, the story does hammer home the point that this isn't actually that big of an issue for him. Futaro takes more offense that they're using the wedding dress instead of something more neutral. I don't think the girls would have done this if they weren't sure Futaro would pass. Futaro takes full advantage of the game to dress each one of the girls down, ranting about how much of a pain in the ass they've been, and all the reasons he loves them anyway. Ichika is a lazy idiot, but she always tries her best. Nino's harsh attitude compensates for her fragile heart and the depth of her love. He doesn't get a chance to criticize Miku because she criticizes herself first, but she's constantly battling her own insecurities, and she no longer needs Futaro to affirm her feelings, nor can he take any credit for the spoils of her internal war. Itsuki tries pulling a fast one on him and he just lays into her. It's really cathartic, especially with how she fights back way more than the others did. She was the first one he got to know. They started out on the wrong foot, and no matter how much they come to love and understand each other, they are way too similar in disposition to get along all the time. We get a little montage of the reception before Yotsuba takes the stage and thanks her parents and her sisters. She apologizes to Maruo for her rebellious streak. It's also very sweet how Yotsuba acknowledges how much her mom still means to her. She then lavishes praise on her sisters. She praises Ichika's individuality, which fits because it was initially Ichika that drove her into a corner and made her desperate to carve out her own identity. She then praises Nino's femininity, which I assume extends to all the cooking and cleaning and other wifely duties Yotsuba will undoubtedly burden herself with. She praises Miku's kindness and her ability to turn her dream into a reality. She emphasizes how Miku always treated her as an equal, and because of that, Miku achieving her dream gave Yotsuba hope that all her dreams would come true as well. Finally, she doesn't say much about Itsuki, but what she does say hits hard. Itsuki is the only one she can call a younger sister, and Itsuki is the one who has been supporting her the most. The newlyweds are finally able to catch a breather and confirm some other story details. Like, Futaro figured out on his own that Yotsuba was the one who kissed him under the bell, but they never talked about it before. Yotsuba also gets rid of her ribbon because she no longer needs it. She only ever wore it to stand out from her sisters. Now she has someone who will always recognize her no matter what she's wearing or not wearing. It also implies that she never told him that she was the one in the picture, which kind of seems a little Weird. We end off with the girls plotting a honeymoon adventure with the newlyweds, which, again, I personally would not be okay with this. I don't care how awesome these girls all look in their swimsuits. The honeymoon is supposed to be the bride and groom's chance to take their first vacation as a couple without getting interrupted by family members. I know that both of them have said more than once that things are more fun when the six of them are together, but geez, this is just crossing a line. We get another cut back and forth between this and the trip they took after graduation, once again showing how some things change and others stay the same. This led some to believe that the wedding was a dream or something, even though the actual proposal and stuff was before graduation. Also, saying a story was all a dream is like the stupidest, most brain-dead level of fan theory out there. There's also a pair of bonus chapters that further dispel this theory. One of them showing the group on a plane to Hawaii, and the other a gag chapter about how much all their boobs have grown, how they all secretly bought swimsuits with Futaro, and how much bigger their mom's boobs were. At the end of the day, Yotsuba and Futaro feel the same way. Being a quintuplet is hard. It's difficult to carve out an identity for yourself when the world expects you to conform. It is difficult to compete when the people you are constantly compared to also happen to be your favorite people in the world. Dealing with one girl is hard enough. Dealing with 5 emotionally volatile, dim-witted ladies who will come up with convoluted schemes to test people and protect themselves can be hell. But Futaro and Yotsuba wouldn't have their life any other way. And I wouldn't have this series any other way. This concludes the quintessential breakdown of Quintessential Quintuplets. Thank you all for indulging me as I gush about this series. I might do a bonus trivia video where I run down all the little tidbits from the character books, volume releases, and bonus chapters, etc., etc. But I'm going to hold off on that for a while. It's been 4 years since I started working on the series, and a lot has changed since then, but my love for the series has not. I'm Mediocrity4. Thanks for watching.